Good morning, everyone. Then this morning, we will be tackling about the topic limits. This is the very first topic in calculus, and it is very important for you to understand it properly before going to the other two major topics, which are the derivative and integral. Importante kayo nga magsabtan ang limit daan because derivative is defined in terms of limits and the integral is defined in terms of derivative. So kung wala kayo nasabtan ang limits, maybe na ay struggle sa inyong side. Okay, before that, let me share this screen. Can you tell me if you can see it? Makita, class?
Yes, sir. Makita.
Yes, sir.
Good. Before we will consider the theorems given here, let us discuss first what is the idea of limit. If we are going to consider limit class, there must be two things that we need to consider. First, you should have a function, say we call it as f of x, and we must also have a fixed point, and we will call it as a. Okay, a function and a fixed point. A fixed point. So, yun ani ang mahitabo. Say for example, your function is given by say x squared. If that is your function. So, and your fixed point is say 0, your a0. Yun ani ang case. That a should be here, should be one of the values of your x. So in your x-axis, say for example, your a is 0, so it's somewhere here, right? No, a is 0. So what you're gonna be doing, class, is you are going to get values closer to 0, values of x closer to 0, and you will observe what will happen to your function. Okay, you get what I mean? So if we say function getting closer to 0, so there are two cases here. Functions values of x coming from the left side, and values of x coming from the right side of 0. So if we say limit, there must be two. Limit, by the way, the definition and the notation for the limit will be written this way. The limit of your function f of x as x approaches to a. I will repeat. Limit of f of x as x approaches to a. If we say limit of f of x as x approaches to a, there must be two. The first one is the limit of f of x as x approaches to a from the left hand side. It's negative. Maklaro no? Talaro na to. Approaches to a from the left hand side. And the other one will be the limit of f of x as x approaches to a from the right hand side. Okay. If you have values here, if you observe that this approaches to a certain value, then that's the limit from the left hand side. And the same thing with the right hand side. And in case their answers are the same, if their answers are the same, then we can say that the limit of f of x as approaches to a is equal to that certain value. Dapat magpareha silang duha before mo exist ang limit ani. Nasabtan? So let us consider here. Nanay yung calculator? As I have said a while ago, you prepare your calculator. So if your function, let us erase this portion. Ay, na lang. Our function is f of x equal to x squared. So our fixed point is a. Let us start with the limit of f of x as x approaches to a from the right hand side. If you say from the right hand side, that is 0, your a is 0, your fixed point is 0. So let us start from 2, right? Right hand of 0. So if we substitute 2 here, what's the answer? Class, what's the answer? If your x is 2, what is your f of x? Substitute diran 2 sa inyong function.
4, sir.
4, sir.
Yes, evaluation of function in your general mathematics, right?
Yes.
Okay, so your answer there will be 4 because your given function is x squared. Let us get values closer to 0. Say 1, right? It's more closer than 2. So let us have 1. If your x is 1, what is your f of x?
1.
1.
sir.
Let's make it closer. Let's have 0.5. Right? Closer pa man, no? So what's the value if your x is 0.5?
0.25.
0.25.
Or 0.25.
0.25.
0.25. Let's make it closer. Let's have 0.1. What's the answer?
0.01.
0.01, sir.
0.01. Let's make it more closer. Say 0.01. What is your f of x if that is your x? 0.01.
0.0001 thousandths.
Thousandths,
1 raised to the
tens,
negative
hundreds, thousands, ana? Sakto?
Tens, hundreds,
Jetro?
thousands. 10,000s.
10,000s. 10,000s. So it must be here. Tulo ka zero dire. Sakto ng pagkabasa ni Jetro. We will have the same language if you read that way. Madali na ito ma-determine kung pila ang zero. Thousands, hundreds, tenths, di ba? Okay. So do you observe something in the value of your f of x as x approaches to 0 from the right-hand side? What do you observe in the value of f of x? Nabasa ni approach ba siya into a certain value? Yes. Does it approaches to a certain value? Usa ka nga value sa ni padulong? Kung imo po yun ipunan diri unsay mahitabo niya, mas mudaghan siya no, mapadulong siya 0.00001 and so on. So, mo nakita diri ni padulong iyang value. Ni padulong kang
0.
0. Yes, that's true. As your x approaches to 0 from the right-hand side, your f of x also approaches to 0. So, you can say that the answer here is 0. Gitan? The limit of f of x as x approaches to a, ato ning ilisdan kay dili na nato f of x tong gamiton katong na yun inyong function. Limit of x squared as x approaches to 0 from the right hand side. The answer is 0, right? Okay, let us also consider the limit of your f of x, say x squared, as x approaches to a from the left-hand side. So this time, let's consider from the left-hand side. So if we consider the left-hand side, we may have here negative 2, right? What is the value of your f of x if your x is negative 2?
4, sir.
Positive 4.
4.
Positive 4.
Positive 4.
Positive 4.
How about we will make it closer, say negative 1?
Positive 1.
Positive 1. How about we will make it negative 0.5? Left side na nyo? Getting closer na, no? Negative 0.5.
0.25.
Positive 0.25. How about
Positive 0.25.
negative 0.1?
Positive 0.01.
Positive 0.01.
Do you
100.
observe something in the value of the f of x? As your x approaches to 0 from the left-hand side. Asa siya ni-approach?
0.
0,
0.
Zero gyapon, sir.
So therefore,
Zero
the
gyapon,
limit
sir.
of x squared as x approaches, let's make it to a 0 here. Limit of x squared as x approaches to 0 from the left-hand side, the answer is 0, right? And I said a while ago, if the limit of your function, say f of x as x approaches to a from the left-hand side, and the limit of f of x as x approaches to a from the right-hand side coincides, kung pareha gani ilang answers, then the limit of this must be the same with that number. So therefore, we can conclude here that the limit of x squared, the limit of x squared as x approaches to 0, wala na yung right-hand side or left-hand side, kay duha naman, is equal to 0 since these two pareha ilang value. Clear? Nasabtan? Nasabtan?
Yes, sir.
Any
Yes, sir.
questions?
Yes, sir.
Questions sa?
Yes, sir. Matanong.
Wala pangutana. Okay, good. Okay. Mauna siya ang dito sa introduction ana sa limit. Okay. Maging nato ba ta in all of the time? Dugay kita mahuman og pag limit ana kung na natong pamaagi. So, there are theorems. If you say theorems, these are this will help you in providing your answer quickly. But this theorem should be proven first before you will use it. But I tell you, these theorems are already proven. We will not discuss anymore how it is proved, but just believe me that these are gipang prove na ni sila daan. The first theorem that we have is the uniqueness of a limit. This theorem tells us that if the limit of f of x as x approaches to a is L sub 1, so a certain value say L sub 1. And you have also the limit of f of x as x approaches to a is also L sub 2. So in that case, they have the same function, the same fixed point, but the answer here is L sub 1, the answer here is L sub 2. If that will happen, this L sub 1 and L sub 2 are just the same. So it means unique. Kasi pasabot ana, if you want to get a limit of a certain function as x approaches to a certain fixed point, ang answer daw ana niya class isa lang if it exists. Okay? Isa ra. Dili pwede ang iyang answer 2 at the same time iyang answer 3. Dili na pwede. Klaro? That is coming from the theorem of the uniqueness of a limit. Okay, let's proceed to the next one. Limit of a linear function. So if you have a function given by the way, this b and c here are real numbers. If you have a function, say limit of f of x, f of x as x approaches to a. Say for example, your f of x is given by this. Kita ninyo? Your f of x is given by bx plus c. That's why it's called linear because this function, f of x here is equal to bx plus c. And it is a linear function, right? No? Kapag naman linear function, a graph niya na is a line. So, in this case, if that is your function class and your fixed point is a, so dahil himuon, pwede na daw nimo na i-substitute kang x. Nahimo na siyang ba plus c. b times a plus c. Clear?
X is equal to C, sir. Ay, X is equal to A, sir.
In this case lang, if x approaches to a, pwede rin mo i-substitute imong fixed point dito sa imong x. Okay? Na lang mo example. Let us have an example here. Letter A. If you have limit of negative 2x minus 5 as x approaches to negative 1, so say mo daw ana?
Substitute.
Negative 2 times negative 1 minus 5, right? Because your a here is negative 1. That is that will only work for this. In some cases, mo work magyapon na. So it is now equal to positive 2 minus 5. So your answer is negative 3. Okay? Even if you check it, katong gihimo ka ganina, still you will get the same answer, negative 3. Okay? So I think that's klaro man na. Letter B. Si answer ani? Can you tell me the answer?
1.
1.
1, sir.
Okay? The theorem can make your life easier. Ikumpara nimo kung kato nga procedure imong gi-follow gadina. Dugay ka mahuman. Kini mas dali. Di ba? So that's the power of theorem. Let us have the next one. Limit of a constant function. So what does this theorem tells us? The limit of a constant function. So somehow like your f of x here is a constant. By the way, c here is any real number. Any real number. So, kabalo mo constant function, no? Sa gani graph anang constant function class sa inyong general mathematics, babe? Daw kabalo pa ba? Bago pa mo nang pasar og general
Straight line, sir. Straight line, sir.
Okay, unsa nga line?
Straight line.
Example, your c is f of x is equal to 2. Unsa may graph ana niya?
Vertical.
Yes,
Ikaw man ang
a horizontal line.
Horizontal, horizontal.
2. Nadali ang 2, no? So, it must be this one. Right? Ano man, no? Kung constant function. Diba? Okay. Sige kuan sa theorem. Sige kuan sa iyang theorem. This theorem states that if your function is a constant function, automatically your answer is C. Because whatever value of x you replace here, the answer is always that one. So your answer is C. Right? Kasi kung sa imong i-substitute dira, i-evaluate nimo dira, ang answer nimo always is the fixed number. So the answer of that limit, of course, is the constant function. So like here, what's the answer in number 1? Can you tell me what's the answer in number 1?
5, sir.
Yes, it's a 5. Oh, ito na to. 5. How about this one?
Square root of 3.
Square root of
Square root
3.
of 3. Simple. This one.
Pi, sir.
Pi.
Value sa pi.
Okay, that's enough. Let's have the next one. The limit of identity function. Oh, kabalo mo sa identity function? Identity function is given by f of x as x approaches. F of x is equal to x, right? So whatever input that you produce, it will be the same output that you will have. Okay? So, in that case, if that is your function, an identity function, just like here, identity function, if your input is 3, your output is also 3. If your input is -10, your output is -10. So in that case, your limit will be your fixed point. Okay? So your answer is A, if that is an identity function. Kung constant, kana ang answer. Kung identity, ang fixed point ang answer. Okay, what's the answer here?
Negative 2.
-2. How about here?
0.
Zero.
Sir.
How about
0,
here?
sir.
5.
Pi.
5.
Easy, right?
Pi.
Easy. Okay, sa'yo na kayo, di ba? Sa'yo naman din yung limit, sir. Sa'yo, bro. Sa'yo na kayo na. O niya, nataka ng mo challenge na ginagmay. I prepared problem sa inyo nga panington po tagamay. Pero makalingaw. Okay, sunod is the limit of sum. Okay, what this limit of sum tells us. If you have a function f of x as x approaches to a is equal to L, and you have another function g of x as x approaches to a equal to m. You have two functions, f of x and g of x. So if you are going to find the limit of the sum of the two functions having the same fixed point, remember, take note, they should have the same fixed point. And this is just the sum of the given two functions. Then what you will be doing, class, is pwede na somehow ma-distribute ang limit just like this. Okay? And somehow, we know that the answer here is L and the answer here is M. So you just take the sum of its limits. If you're looking for the sum of the two functions, the limit of the sum of the two functions, the answer is just the sum of their limits. Okay? Nasabtan? Okay, let us have it here. Say for example, in the here, there is a number 1. So say limit sa first nga function. Kini may unang nga function, no? Constant man na, di ba?
Yes, sir.
So say answer ana.
Negative 3.
Negative 3, sir.
Negative 3.
Sunod. Identity function, di
Negative
ba?
1.
Negative 1.
Negative
Minus
1.
1. So your answer is?
Negative 4.
Actually, pwede po na sa gamitan atong linear, no? Pwede po aning sum. Kuha ninyo? Kay linear function, magyapon na. Na ako lang gi-illustrate in that way para makita ninyo yun sa pag-perform ang limit of sum. Okay? Nasabtan? Okay. How about here? What's the answer here? By the way, I here is the imaginary number. Okay? I think namoy background gamay sa complex number. So if x is 0, so you can replace it the 0 here. So your answer is negative 4i, right? What's the answer?
Negative 9i. sir.
Negative
9i.
9i.
How about here?
9i.
What's the answer?
E.
E.
Negative e.
Negative E.
Negative E.
So if you take the
E.
sum of these two, since they have the same sign, which is negative, so it will be negative
Negative
13i
13i.
minus e.
Minus
Okay.
E.
Here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The same thing will happen for the product. The same thing will happen for the product. So if you have the same case, but this time you are going to take the product of the two functions, you are going to find the limit of the product of the two functions into the same fixed point. Then what you will be doing is you just take the limit of the first times the limit of the second, and this will be the result. Okay? And I think you understand that one. And it can, by the way, before that, kining limit of the sum can also be done in not just in two functions. It can be done in many functions, as many as you can. Okay? Parehan niya itong gihimo. Tulo man ni ka functions, di ba? Dili lang duha. It can be done in many functions. It still work in many functions. And
Basta
the same,
ang A, basta ang A, sir, kanang equal.
parehas. Yes, the same ang imong fixed point. And the same with the multiplication. It will also work. It will not be limiting into two functions only. It can work for many functions as you can. Okay. The next one is this. Let k be a constant or any real number. Then the limit of f of x as x approaches to a is equal to L. Then, if you're looking for the limit of k times your f of x as x approaches to a, the same fixed point again, you can just set aside the k. Pwede rin mo ipadaplin and you get the limit of that. And whatever is the limit here, you just multiply it with your constant and that will be your answer. Okay? So, if we are going to consider number 1 here, pwede man yung ma-apply ng product, no? Diba? So, it can be now limit of 7x plus 11. Oops, let's write it clearly. Plus 11 as x approaches to negative 2 times the limit of negative 4x plus 1 as x approaches to negative 2, right? So, if we will solve this one, say answer any, a portion.
Negative 4.
Hindi ko sure. Wait lang.
Negative 3, because it will be negative 14 plus 11, right? How about here? What's the answer? Here.
Negative 7.
Positive
Huh?
7.
Negative 7.
9, sir.
9.
9.
Because negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8 plus 1, it's 9. So your answer here must be negative 27, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number 2, the same thing. Okay, give me the answer in the first function.
15, sir. 15.
15. Very good. How about the next function?
10, sir. I delete 4 days, sir.
Again?
4, sir. 4.
4. Nganong 4 man, Christian? Can you tell us why 4?
3 times 3 equals 9, sir. Plus minus 5, 4.
Very good. It's a 4. How about the next one?
Negative
1.
Negative 1.
Okay, why negative 1, Michaela? Can you tell us why negative 1?
Negative 3 plus 2, sir.
Very
Since
good.
dili
So it's a
masala.
negative 1.
Negative 1.
So what's our final answer?
Negative 60.
Negative 60. Right? Sa'yo rin, di ba? Carry ra. Okay ra na sa'yo na limits. Di ba? So sa'yo na mo din ng calculus, sir. Sa'yo na, oy. Okay, let us have the next one. The theorem. This theorem. This one. What will happen if you will have your function and you take the square, cube, or whatever exponent that you have. Yan na, kabalo na ka sa limit aning function sa sulodaan. Still, you will just take the power of that certain limit. Okay? Okay, that's it. So if we are going to solve this one, what's the limit of inside?
3, sir.
3. So it should be 3 raised to 5. Got it? So what's the answer of 3 raised to 5 in your calculator?
143, sir.
243.
433?
200, sir.
243, sir.
243.
243.
Because 243, because that is 9, 27, 81, 243, right? How about here? So it's a combination of many theorems, right? Theorem sa product of theorem ani. Okay, so the answer is the first one. Can you tell us the limit of the first function?
1, sir.
One, sir.
One
One.
Russia.
One.
Because it's negative 2 plus 3, it's 1. 1 cube, right? 1 cube. Nala sa ating butang, 1 cube. Sunod, ang pikas.
Negative 3, sir.
Negative 243.
Negative 3 raised to 5. No?
Raise to 5.
Negative 3 raised to 5.
Negative
So,
raised to 5.
ay negative na niya, add na, negative din yung answer nino. So, ang answer niya, it's 1 ra. It's 1. This is just the same with this, right?
Negative 243.
243. So, if you multiply them, it's negative 243. Right? So, yun. Asa yun naman dyan. So, yun pa kayo na. Let's have the next one. Okay. How about if we will take the square root? Because it works if you take the square, the cube, the raised to the power of 4, and so on. How about if you take the square root? If you take the square root, there are cases to be considered. Why? Because the idea here will only be under the concept of real number. And if you take the nth root of a certain number, and if it's under the set of real number, it will be undefined if your radicand is a negative number, right? So it should be positive for us to have a positive value here. Or defined value rather, defined value. Under the set of real numbers. Because if we consider under the complex numbers, that will be defined. We will be having imaginary numbers. Okay. If your L is greater than or equal to 0, kaning answer daw sa imong limit sa function sa sulod is greater than or equal to 0 and n is a positive integer, this will work. Okay? Again, I will repeat. Kung ang limit daw anang f of x is greater than or equal to 0, nya kining imong n daw is a positive integer, then this is true. Clear? And the second case is, how if, sir, if less than 0 ni siya? If this is less than 0. If that is less than 0, this one, and your n is a positive odd, kung odd ni, then nasa, mo work po ni. Pero kung even na, it will not work. Okay? Nakuha ninyo? Because if you have square root, example, that is square root. So that is example negative 4. Nya even ni. Ito man no? Undefined man na, di ba? Under the set of real numbers. Pero kung cube na, nya na kay example negative 8, defined man ni. Nang defined man ni, pwede mo guni masulat as cube root of negative 2 raised to 3. Agree? Pareha man sila, di ba? Because negative 2 raised to 3 is just negative 8. So in this case, makancel ning square root og ang cube root. Cube root og ang cube. So your answer is negative 2. Right? So it means it will work even if your L here is negative. But if your n is odd, still na siya answer. Oha? Pero kung kini negative, but your n is even, wala siya answer. Undefined siya. Under the set of real numbers. Clear? Nasabtan?
Yes, sir.
Good. So let us have here this one. Okay. What's the answer here?
Negative 1, sir.
Negative 1.
Because here it will be fifth root. You apply this one and you apply katong exponent, no? What's the answer inside first? Kini inyong function sa sulod.
Negative 1, sir.
Negative 1.
Negative
Negative
1 because you have 8 minus 9, right? And as you observe, if you take this the cube of negative 1, what's the answer?
Negative 1.
Negative 1 times
sir.
negative
Negative 1,
1 times negative 1. Still negative 1, right?
Huh?
Right?
Does not exist.
And if you consider here, it's a negative. But can
Does
you
not
look at here?
exist.
Kung sa inyong index, odd or even?
Add, sir.
Add.
Na-value wala?
Naas.
Because
Uh-uh.
that negative 1 can also be written as negative 1 raised to 5. Why raised to 5? Because my index is 5. Para makancel ni. Right? Because that can be written as negative 1 raised to 5 raised to the power of 1 over 5, di ba? Kung kana-kana nga case. So, makancel ning duha, mawala ni. So, ang answer ni is negative 1 na lang. Di ba? Mo ang idea sa square root or sa radicals. If you
Basta
rewrite
add,
it,
sir.
basta add
Basta add
index. Index.
ang yang kuan kanang n, sir.
Index, yes, ang iyang n. Tama.
Negative.
Pero kung even, wala siya. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, good. Let us have the next one. Kanina lang. I want you to do it. Okay, can you try? I'll give you time to do it.
Yes, ako, sir. Kana.
Two, sir.
Bulfe.
Okay.
2 ang answer, sir.
Ano sa answer?
Two, sir.
2.
Two.
Ako, sir.
2.
Ano sa answer? 2 gihapon? I want to hear from
Prosiso.
the rest of your classmates. How about Alexis?
sir.
What's your answer,
Two,
Alexis?
sir.
Bordado.
Sir,
What's your answer?
2, sir.
How about Mitzi? What's your answer, Mitzi?
Yapon, sir. 2.
How about, tawago na to ning uban. Si Janelle Magsayo. What's your answer, Janelle? Off cam. Janelle. Again? Tugi yapon. How about, atong i-random ni sila. Kung naminaw bagin ni sila. Si Hannah. What's your answer, Hannah?
2, sir.
Yun saan mo pagkuha ang 2, Hannah?
Cube root of, char.
Katong cube root, sir.
Lagi. Unsay answer sa function sa sulod? Jihan.
8, sir.
Jihan.
Cube root of 8.
Okay, Jihan. What's the answer of the function sa sulod? Limit of the function inside.
8, sir.
8, sir. 8 lang, sir.
8, sir. Kay
Eight. Nganong
21
8 man?
times 0.
Kay
Yes.
21 times 0 is
Times
equals to 0, sir. Dayon.
Tama. Correct. Very good. So what's the answer here, Mariel Tago? Tago, what's the answer here? Cube root of 8. Cube root of 8 is isa naman ano? Dahil naman na. 8 can you write 8 into an exponent of 3? Yes, Elson.
Yes,
Elson.
Yes, sir. Kay
O saan, Elson?
kay pag, di ba sir, 2 times 2, 4 times 2, 8. So, pwede siya masulat o kuan, 2 raised to 3.
Very good. 2 raised to 3. In that case, your answer is 2, right? So
Yes,
your answer
sir,
is
din.
correct.
Pwede na din siya makuan cancel.
Yes, it will be canceled out. Or actually, kung ano siya, simplified. Ato lang gigamit na cancel, kaya gusto man ito na sa eliminate. Di ba? Pero sakto gana, we simplify it. Because if we multiply 3 and 1/3, it becomes 1. And if that is 1, you may not write it anymore here. So we simplify it. Right? Di dun unta na siya cancel, no? Ato na lang gi-accept na pamaagi nga term. So your answer is 2. Agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions? The next theorem, maunin na siya nagsugod ang kanindot. Dili nagsugod ang beauty sa limit. Okay? And you will have it on Tuesday. Ibitin sa tamo gamay. But I want you to study in advance about this. Kuan man din. Dili kini ang pasabot. By the way, it will also work class if you have quotient. It will also work for quotient. But see to it that your denominator should not be equal to 0. Your m should not be equal to 0. Okay. Kini day ang pasabot sa inyo. Kini nga theorem ang atong i-discuss next meeting. Okay? I want you to try this one and this one in your free time. And I want you to tell me kung sa inyong na-observe sa inyong answer, ha? O kanapod. Then kung dili mag-work, giunsa ninyo para mag-work. Okay? I want you to do it in your free time. Okay, again, ha?
Hey, sir.
For sure, it will not work.
Nakakatag naman ni sa kansa.
Again?
Example po ni sa katong 10 items, sir.
Nga item
Katong
sa...
gatag nga exercise, sir. Ang exercises, sir.
Yes.
Nabo na, sir.
Yes, tama.
Napana na, sir.
Yes, Jeyo, you're raising your hand. Jeyo, Saison?
Ay, wala na, sir.
Okay, good. Okay. Katoha, you try to answer this one. Dayon, can you tell me kung unsa inyong answer? Kung dili mag-work, say for example, if the denominator is 0 or both numerator and denominator is 0, unsa inyong gihimo para mag-work. Okay? And I want you also to answer the 10 questions here if you find that technique, the observation. And after we discuss, next meeting, kanilang sa ato i-focus, kanilang sa topic. Kana sila, sira na to na tanan. I-discuss na itong previous na theorem yan, sira na to na tanan. Then the next meeting na pod, we will have the one-sided limit. Okay? Any questions before we go? Clarifications? Wala pangutana?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes.
I-post siya po ni mo ni sa mga YouTube, sir.
Yes, yes. Why? Di mo ganahan?
Ay, koan, sir. Para
Excuse
paano
me,
ba?
sir.
Ay, basin dili, sir, ba?
Yes.
Nila pang
I will
review.
be, by the
Uban
way, I will be posting it in my YouTube channel later. At the same time, I will be finalizing my katong cyber classroom na to. I call it the actualized cyber classroom, di ba? I already informed you about that one. I called it as self-actualized cyber classroom. Before I called it MOPCC, right? I called it as SACC, self-actualized cyber classroom. Why self-actualized? Because you will be creating your own in the end, right? So I called it self-actualized cyber classroom. Okay? Oto siya. I will be posting it in my YouTube channel. At the same time, i-finalize na ko probably inyang gabi ang ako ang SACC sa atong calculus nga class. Dito na ninyo tanawon. Nanatanan dito. Okay? Any questions? Clarification? Sir, ipasa ang
excuse me,
answer.
sir.
Yes, Jethro.
Kanang imong videos bitaw sa kanang sa pre-calculus, sir.
Yes,
Wala
yes.
lagi, sir. Nawala.
O, ato'y ko ano niya. Ato'y balik ko niya. Ibang send ako sa inyo. Okay?
Nawala. Imong YouTube channel, sir.
Ha?
Time.